Hi, I'm Dean, and welcome to the first in a series of videos introducing the CodeIgniter 4 web development framework. I really like CodeIgniter. It was one of the first web frameworks I worked with and learned, and I sort of have a soft spot for it. For a little while, CodeIgniter kind of fell behind some of the other development frameworks, but with the release of CodeIgniter 4, and in particular the addition of the official extension for authorization and authentication, I think it's really become a very complete web framework. I think it fits really nicely between the micro frameworks like Flask or Slim and the command line driven frameworks like Laravel and Django, and it's kind of hits that sweet spot for me. It doesn't do much to get between you and the code. It's pretty lightweight, and it still has a full featured set of tools to help you with your web development work. So let's take a look at the project we'll be creating together. I have called it the National Parks Explorer, and at this point it's a sort of a basic CRUD functionality, a little bit of a simplified blog, I guess, at this point. And here's kind of what the splash page looks like. We can go over to trips, and the idea here is that we're going to be able to define trips that we take to see the national parks. We'll be able to add stops that we have along the way, and add stops to our trips, and we'll just record the pins, I guess, along a map as we're working our way through a trip, and then share it with friends. We'll be using the authentication and authorization component. We'll be using Leaflet.js to help us with mapping. We'll be working with a GeoJSON file for all the parks data, and trying to flesh this out so that it is a little bit more of a complex example of using a framework, and something complete, something I hope that will be nice for your resume. So to start out with, we've got to do a couple things. Obviously, we got to go get the framework. But first, you will need a web server to work with and a database server. And the easiest way, at least for me, has been to use XAMPP or XAMPP. And here you'll find it at Apache Friends. And it was pretty easy to install. I found here we are again on the download page. I found the instructions for downloading it into my Ubuntu box. Pretty straightforward. Hopefully it'll be the same for you if you have a Windows or a Mac going on. And once you've completed that step, come on back to CodeIgniter, and we'll walk through how to use Composer to install it to our web server root. And so let's start with that. I'm going to go to the instructions for installing it. You can install CodeIgniter as a library. There's a few additional steps. I'm choosing to use Composer. I just think it makes it more straightforward and makes sure that I have the dependencies that I need as I'm working through this setup. So here is what it looks like for the Composer installation. There's just a quick instruction there about how to do that. And it's right here. We got to open up a terminal. So I'm going to, not files, open up a terminal. And let's make sure I'm in the right spot here. And I'm going to go down a couple levels to get to the root here. Putting all the spaces that I need. And now I've got to get to opt and htdocs, opt, and then lamp with two P's, and then htdocs, which is the web server root. Let's make sure we're in the right place. Looks like I'm there. And from here, I'm going to use the Composer command to set up an app starter and to create a folder for my project. So go ahead and copy that off. We'll go back to our terminal and just type that in. Before you hit return, be sure to type in the name of the project root that you want, or the folder that you want for your document root. And I'm calling mine NP National Park Explorer. Just to make it kind of easy for me to remember. And we'll go ahead and hit enter. And I've had that problem about not creating the catch directory, but so far it hasn't interfered with doing the tutorial. So it's something I'll have to look into a little more to try to solve. It takes a little bit to download. Okay, so there we go. So we created make sure we got what we need here. I'm going to cd into NP Explorer to make sure let's just do a directory. What's going on in there, and as you can see, I have lots of things in my htdocs that I'm practicing for this tutorial. And do we have the one we're looking for? And we do. NP Explorer, there it is. So on my machine, I'm going to change the permissions to NP Explorer, the entire folder. Open them, just put them wide open. You might want to consider that carefully in your particular situation, but I'm in a pretty isolated machine here that I only use, and I'm using it strictly as a development environment. So I'm gonna chance it. I'm gonna be okay with that. So and npx for oops, better tell me what permissions you want there, right? Okay, that looks right. And I think that worked out just fine. All right, so we should have that ready to go on our web server root. And just to test it out, we'll go over to our web browser. I'm going to move this out of my way. And let's see if we can find it on localhost. And we'll just type in localhost. I'm assuming that my XAMPP is running. Yeah, it is. So let's see, localhost. And it'll be under np explorer and then public. That's where you'll find the index page. Everything's right there. There we go. So we have it up and running. First thing I want to do is I want to create a virtual host. I think it's just going to make more sense, be a little more intuitive as we're working through routing. So it looks a little more real world to have a real website name. So let's do that. Let me show you how we accomplish that. In my setup on Ubuntu using XAMPP, it looks like this. It might look different in your situation, but here's what it looks like on mine. I suspect no matter what you do, there's a couple of files that you'll have to edit. And let me get to my file explorer. I'm going to move that over here. We're going to go right to here to the computer root here, and the first thing we'll do is we'll change it in the Apache configuration folder, which for me on my system is under opt, lamp, and then etc, extra, and then finally httpd vhost.conf, and that's the one you want to edit. You do need to edit it as an administrator for things to work right. And there we go. Oh, didn't like that. There we go. And here we go, virtual host file here. I've already added mine in. As you can see, I have quite a few practice ones here as I'm working through some tutorials. The one you want is right here for NP Explorer. And this is what you need to add to your virtual host file. You need to identify the document root, and it's, in this case, it's opt, lamp, htdocs, np explorer, and then the public folder. And you need to give it a server name of npexplorer.test, and you'll be ready to roll. And the next file that you need to change once you save this one, closed out, is go back to the computer here, and you're going to need to go to etc. And then there's a hosts file here. There's a whole bunch of them named they have host in it, but it's the hosts file right here. And you're going to open that one with administrator, as administrator. And again, and what you need to add here is npexplorer.test, npexplorer.test, which points to the IP for your localhost 127.0.0.1. So that ought to work. The next thing that you need to do is to restart your server to make sure that goes into effect. And let's do that. For me, get to my, hold on a sec. All right, working. It's asking me to enter it in my authentication, and there it is. And we need to manage servers, and you just need to restart all. And it always seems to take a moment on my machine. There we go. And we're ready to type in our URL here. So it'll be npexplorer.test. And there we go, we're back where we need to be. Okay, now let's go into our code editor. I'm using Visual Studio, and I like it. And little Visual Studio Code here's, it seems like almost everybody has it now. I'm already there in NP Explorer. That's the folder we need to be in. We have to make a couple of changes to our to our configuration files in order to get everything to work the way we want it to. And particularly, we want to make sure we're in a development environment so we get our debug tools available to us. So the first thing you have to do is, and this was kind of a gotcha, so open up the env file, this one right here, and then immediately create a new file. This is probably the easiest way to do it. A new file called .env. Put that dot in there. You can't read it until you have that .env. So open that. Now hit that one. Now I should have done is copied everything out of env. I'm sure you can copy everything out of that one. Whoop, don't miss anything. Ah, come on. I know there's a better way to do this, but okay, there we go. All 140 lines. Copy and paste that in your .env file. Okay, everything looks good. Now, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to make sure that we're in a development environment. And if you go on up here to, where is it? Right here. Make sure you've uncommented this line and change production to development. And you'll be glad you do this as you're working through this project. And be sure to change your base URL to, oh, come on, HTTP. And then we've called ourselves npx Explorer and .tests. Okay, so that looks right, and that looks right. Let's see if everything worked out well. Let's save this file. Okay, let's go back to our browser, and let's reload this one. Sure it's still working, and yeah. Look at that. So this is what happens. You get this little debug bar. It's kind of handy. Close it out if you want to. This little symbol right here. You can tell you're in the development environment. It says so right there. And this little guy is going to be really helpful to us, getting to the debug bar, so you can find your views and your routes and all of that. And all that will make more sense as we're walking through this tutorial. Okay, so we've done a fair amount of work right now, and I'll be back in a minute to get us started with some, changing out this welcome page to the one that we want it to be, and to adding our first static pages to our application. Before we begin creating the initial controllers and views that we'll be using in the project we're working on together, the National Parks Explorer, I thought it would be useful to take a look at CodeIgniter from kind of a high level, kind of the 30,000 foot view, just to describe a little bit about what CodeIgniter is and what it does. CodeIgniter is a web development framework written in PHP that implements the model view controller design pattern. And MVC is a very common notion in many web development frameworks, and the idea is that we're trying to divide up our application into three distinct layers: the model layer, the view layer, and the controller layer. The model layer is responsible for creating data objects that can then be used by the controller layer, and the view layer is responsible for presentation, for rendering HTML to the browser. The controller really acts as a connector between the views and the models. Now, I recognize that that's a very abstract idea right now. Probably doesn't make any sense at all until you get into it a little bit, but I think it'll become much more clear as we're working through our application. If you're new to MVC, I think that you will find it a really helpful tool in providing an architecture, a way of constructing your application. And if you're not new to MVC, if you use other frameworks, I think you'll appreciate how CodeIgniter implements this in a very simple, I think, and straightforward way. And if you want to know more about it, I think that CodeIgniter 4 here in their overview does a great job of describing MVC and kind of getting into the theory a little bit. But I'm hoping you'll learn a lot more as we go along through this tutorial. And yeah, so I'm ready to start coding. So here we go. So here's where we left off before we took a little look at CodeIgniter at a high level. And now let's write some code. So if you'll go back into your Visual Studio Code or your editor of choice and open up NP Explorer. I'm already there, and we're going to start we're going to make our first controller. We're going to make 3 controllers in this section. We're going to make one for each of our static pages. We're going to have the main page or the landing page, an about page, and a contact page. So that's the goal to get started with here. So in apps, the first thing we're going to do is create a controller. If you haven't worked in a web development framework like CodeIgniter before, one of the things to note is how important it is to put files in the correct folders and capitalization and naming conventions are really important. They just aren't going to work right if you don't kind of follow the rules of the road here. So let's get started here. Let's take a look first at what's in the controllers directory right now. There's a base controller and there's a home controller. And just to get a sense of what's going on and what we'll be doing, let's take a look at the home controller. This is the controller that's initiated right away when we see the CodeIgniter splash page that comes out of the box. So here's what it looks like. And it's super simple and not a lot of lines of code here. We're going to be using this as a sort of as a template for the ones that we'll be creating initially. And there's not much going on here, not much to help me explain what's happening. So we're going to create some of our own, and we're going to change up the home page that exists now and create one that we want. So let's start with this. Just go ahead and copy this off for now. Put it in your clipboard, and we'll be using it in just a second here. So we're going to create our first controller. Under controllers, create a file, and we're going to call this file landing page, or this controller landing page, and be sure to end with the extension PHP. Let's go ahead and copy in what we have in our clipboard there. All right. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to create a class that matches the name of the file that we've created, called landing page. And the next thing landing page. Make sure that those match and they're capitalized here. And we're going to return a view that's different than this. It won't be the welcome message. We're just going to call it, for sake of exercise here, we'll call it landing message. So it's a message that we're going to have on our landing page. Okay. So let me walk you through this a little bit just really quickly. We're declaring a namespace because it makes sense, app controllers. And we're creating a class landing page that extends the base controller. We're going to be doing a lot of that in CodeIgniter. We're extending existing classes that are in CodeIgniter. And this class only contains, at least at this point, only contains one function or one method. Remember that method is a function inside of a class, so this method, and we're calling this one index. As a matter of fact, for our purposes right now, just because I think it'll make it clear what's going on with routing, and we'll get to that in just a moment. We've got to piece this together. Let's just call this public function. We're going to rename it to message. Is that what I want? Yeah, we can. Well, I don't want to confuse public function. Okay, we can call it message. We just don't want to get the name of the view and the name of the method confused. They are different here. Okay, that'll be important here soon. So all this first controller is doing, landing page, is calling this, creating a method called message, and it's just returning a view called landing message. So we need to make a view that's called landing. It doesn't happen yet until we create our first view called landing message. So let's save this one, make sure we got that going for us. And in order to create a view, we have to put it under the folder named views. So let's create our first view. I'm going to create a new file, and we're going to call our view landing message. It's got to match what the name of what we're returning there. So landing message. So landing message. And remember to end it with the extension PHP. Implied here is that there will be a .php extension. So we'll create landing message.php in the views folder. And all this is going to say in our first controller here is maybe a little HTML tag. Yeah. And yep, we want to do that. And we'll just have a paragraph tag here for tag 4, and we'll just say welcome to National Parks Explorer. So this will be the first page we want to see. Okay, and hey, it's pretty exciting, so we'll put an exclamation point at the end. All right, so we'll save this one. I'll save. We need to start working with our routes and working with a configuration file called routes. And this will all make sense when we go to the web browser. So bear with me for just a minute, if you wouldn't mind just following along. And I think it'll, like I said, it'll make sense when we put all the pieces together here. So in your config directory, and go scroll down here, they're all in alphabetical order, and we're looking for routes.php. Just click that one open. We need to make a quick change here. And what I'd like to do is set do this set auto routing, and it's just route set auto route to being true. Now, if you're kind of reading along here, you might see, oh, true. Now you'll notice that there's a pretty big statement here. Hey, we don't. Hold on a second. Let me fix this problem here. It doesn't hose me up later. Auto routing is not a good idea. But if you're going to do it, go ahead. I guess no. But the notion is, yeah, they're right. They're setting auto routes to true it opens up a potential for vulnerabilities. But I think just for purposes of building some understanding, for right now, I want to go ahead and set it true. We're going to be turning it off later, but for now, I think it's just useful to see what's going on here. So go ahead and make that be true for the purposes of practice here. So save that one. Okay. So let's go back here and take a look at what we've done so far. All we've done is created one new controller called landing page. It needs to match the class name needs to match the name of our file, which is landing page. It's extending the base controller. We're creating one method called message, and all it's doing is returning a view landing message. And landing message is a file that we've created in our views folder, and it's basically a little bit of HTML that's going to be spit out from that method. So let's see how this works in the browser. All right. So let's go back to the browser. And this is kind of where we left off before here. We correctly got our virtual host. Now, if we want to find the page that we just created, the way to do that is to type in these URI segments. And the first one will be the name of the controller, and we've called that landing page. And the next one that we've created is called message, right? Message. So let's hit that and see what we get. There it is. So this is really what's going on behind the scenes in CodeIgniter, and kind of the power of this notion of routing a controller to a method. And it's a really powerful concept. And when you begin to wrap your head around this, I think you'll really find its utility and how useful it is in creating web applications. The idea is that, hey, in CodeIgniter, once we've declared our base URL here, if you type in a controller and a method, that's what's going to be delivered to the browser. That's what's going to be rendered out. And so with just a few lines of code, we've done the work of connecting a controller to a view. We've made that first connection from a controller to a view. Later in the tutorial, we'll start connecting data to the controller and then the controller to the view. And that's where the real power is in working with a web development framework like CodeIgniter. Okay, so let's go back to Visual Studio Code now and make a couple of more classes, or controllers with classes, just to begin to kind of flesh this out even a little bit more. So let's reduce this config directory just so I don't get too confused, and let's create the next two controllers here. We're going to create one for the About page and one for the Contact Us page. So let's create two new controllers. A new controller will be a new file. Here is going to be called about.php. Okay, and we'll just create an empty one here. And we're going to go back to our landing page PHP because I think we might as well just use this code. I mean, it just is a template for what we're doing. These are all going to be very simple controllers for the moment. So just copy that off, and in the About PHP, paste that in. All right. So paste that in. Obviously, it's not going to be landing page anymore. Remember, these classes need to match their file names, so that will be about. And we're going to create a new function where we'll call it, and this one, well, we'll just leave it to be message. That's fine. And call it message. And then it's a brand new method because it's inside a different controller. Right, so this one will be called, how about we call this one, to distinguish it, we'll just call it the About message. And then that means that we got to create an About message view file, right? So let's go back into views and create a new file called about.php, right? That would be what we're doing. We're going to go ahead and click that one open. And an About PHP is going to be very much like the landing message PHP. Let's open that real quick just to copy that out. And copy that, go back to the About PHP view, paste that one in, And of course, we don't want this to say to be our landing page message. We want to say about us right here. About us. And about us. And why don't we end that in that tag? Just like we know what we're doing. Okay, so oops. Yeah, that's not good. All right, looks like my tags are all happy now. Okay, so we'll save all that stuff, right? Okay. So now when we go to our web browser and we want to see our about message, what we're going to do is the contents of our about view, we're going to type in about, which is the name of our controller, and we have a message method in that controller, the only one we have in there. So let's see if this works. And we get an exception because why? Well, we didn't say invalid file about message. Did I not save it right? No, making mistakes just to start out with. Let's see. What did we call this? Oh yeah, that's easier. Make one right off the bat here. Let's rename that to about message, right? We want it to match our about. Let's make sure we got it right here. About message. Did I do that right? .php, about message.php. Yep, there we go. File, save. Now things should work properly. We have the here in our controller. We're asking for about message. Well, we better match to our about message, which is our view file. Okay. All right. Let's go see if that doesn't work now. Let's reload. There we go. About us. So there's routing working again for us. The auto routing working. It says it's funny. Put our base URL here plus these segments about our controller, message, our method. All right, so everything's working the way that it should. Let's add one more back here in Visual Studio Code, and let's put in we want to make a contact.php. Let's go ahead and copy this so we will have it in our clipboard. Just copy that, and we'll make one more controller called contact. So contact.php. We're going to do this one more time, just for drill. Oh, we missed a tag here. There we go. We're extending this our class, which has to match the name of our file, which is going to be contact. Okay, and we're going to create a function called message, new method called message. It's the contact message method, right? And this one's going to call a return a view called contact message. All right, very good. We're going to make a new file in our views because we don't have one called contact message yet. And I'm going to do it right this time. I'm going to say contact message.php. All right, create that one, and that one's going to look very much like our about message, right? We're going to just open that and copy it off. Well, I'm not doing so much typing. Make you suffer through my typing would just be cruel. So let's do this. Paste that in, and there we go. And we got to make sure we save everything. File, save all. Okay, let's go see if everything's still working the way it should. And there was our about message, and now this time we're going to have a contact message. Oh, contact. Did we change I don't think we changed the content of the message. I think it's still going to say about us. Let's see. Yeah, so that was my mistake. One more mistake here in the beginning. Oh, let's change this contact message to say something that's different than about us. Contact us. How about that? Just so we know that we've done it right. Contact us. Let's see if that one doesn't work now. Okay. Well, I'll get this right yet. Save. Okay. So we got, let's see. Let's go back here. Contact message. Boom. There it is. Contact us. So we have an about message, a contact message, and of course our main page, which is going to be right now, we have the URL landing page and message. All right, there we go. Now, I don't like this, right? This is too much. You want this first page to show up when you just type in our virtual host name, when you type in our domain name here. right? So we need to fix this. So let's go back to Visual Studio Code, and I'll show you how you can define routes in the routes configuration file. So let's go back to our configuration folder, and let's just reduce these for a second. Config folder, back down here under R for routes. Let's open up that one again. I don't already have it open. Now you'll notice that a couple of things. Now right now there's a route that's set for home index. Right, the controller that ships with CodeIgniter 4 is home, and it's got one method called index that brings up the index.php view, and we want to change that. We don't want this anymore. We want this to be landing page, and then I think we set it to message, right? And message is the name of our only one and only so far method in the landing page class. Okay, so this is great. I mean, we can set routes in all kinds of ways, but this is probably the most basic. You're just completely overriding a particular route. We're saying, hey, if you go to the base URL, right? Remember we set that base URL, and you don't type anything else in. Go to the. I'm telling you, I want you to go to landing page message. I don't want you to mess around. You don't have to do anything else. Just type in your virtual host name, your base URL, and I will give you landing page message. Let's make sure that that's working. We'll save that, and we'll go back here. And now, if we go to our virtual host name here, boom, up there, still there. Yeah, because we've overwritten the routing rules, the auto routing rules, and to make it very specific, we said, hey, if you just type in base URL, you get to the main page. Okay, so there's some routing. We made some controllers. We've connected them to views, and pretty simple so far. Not a lot of code to get a fair amount done. And I hope you're beginning to kind of see how this works with the controller method routing connection, and it gives you a whole new way of developing applications. Okay, we'll be back in a minute with our next steps. Okay, so we're getting ready to do our next steps here, and they really are all about making things look a lot less ugly. And the first ugly thing that I want to fix are these ugly URIs, this ugly address situation we've got going on. If I want to get to the about page, I've got to type about and message, right? So message, and there it is. But I don't like that. I don't want to have to type in this last segment here. I just want to be able to type in, my virtual host name and about. That just kind of makes sense for these static pages to keep them really simple. And there's an easy way to do that in CodeIgniter in working with our routes configuration file. Let me show you how to do that. So going back to Visual Studio Code. Come on, let's get that open. Let's check something out here in how this file is written for us right now. And one of the things you'll notice is that they've set a default method. The default method is called index. So if we create a method in any controller and we name it index, it'll automatically show up, and you won't have to type in that last segment in your URI. So let's fix that. Let's go back to some of our controllers here, our landing page controller, our about controller, and our contact controller, and let's fix this. So going back to our controllers here, I've already got them open. Rather than calling this method message, let's call it index. Okay, let's call that index, and let's do the same thing for contact.php. That controller, I want to call that index. And finally, we want to have the one for about PHP. That's another controller, and we want to call that method index. Okay, so wherever we have an index method in any controller, it will be rendered without having to type in that last portion of the URI. I'll save those. Okay, save all. One more thing we have to do, because before I forget, and that is, let's go back to routes PHP, back into that configuration file. And you remember that we set one of our routes to just to override it completely to landing page message. Well, that message is no longer no longer a method in that class or that controller landing page. So we got to rename that to index, right? Everything matches up. So let's go back, save that one. Let's go back to our browser and make sure that this is working correctly. So first of all, can I just say about and not about message to get what I'm looking for? Yep, still works. Let's type in contact. Yep, contact us works. And then finally, of course, if we just type our virtual host name, npexplorer.test, we should get our landing page, and we do. So all that's working great. Our URLs, our URIs look better. But boy, this sure is ugly, isn't it? I really want to begin using the template, even though it's just got made up content in it right now. But just to get a sense of how to use that framework, that CSS framework within our web framework. Speaking of that, let's take a quick look before we move on at Pico CSS, and I'm just going to kind of go over and make sure that we can find it here. Let's just I'll open up a new tab. So it's Pico CSS is the framework I found, and let me tell you a little bit about this and why I chose it, and kind of a little bit of a review of this thing. So when I did my last tutorial, I was using Bootstrap 5, and it's a big framework, and it's great, and so many people use it. It's ubiquitous. It's just all over the place on the internet, and it's super useful. I felt like it was possible that the CSS framework, because it was so big and because the classes are so verbose, things could have gotten kind of confusing when what I'm really trying to give a tutorial on is a web framework. So, and I also want to acknowledge the fact that we're using frameworks in two different contexts here. One is the web development framework, which is CodeIgniter, and the other one is the CSS framework, in this case Pico CSS. And so the CSS framework is really just working at the presentation layer to give some really good, useful things like typical features like nav bars and hero banners and things like that. And you can see a whole it's not really long, the whole short list of them here that are in Pico. There's some layout stuff, and there's elements like the typography is pretty nice. I like it okay, and how they work with buttons and forms and tables and some components that are used. If cards are pretty common in any kind of website, and modals if you choose to use them, and of course nav bars here. And in Pico's case, they just keep everything really simple. A nav bar in Pico, just looks like this. I mean, if the nav bar in Bootstrap 5 is quite a bit longer. So I just want to give you a little overview, a resource to look at if you find a tag that's confusing, or you want to change the look of a button or something that you're working on. You can find it here in the Pico documentation. The other reason I use is here. They have some examples, some themes basically. This is the theme that I use called Company, and chopped it up and hacked it up to work for the way I wanted it to work for NP Explorer, just to make it look a little better, look a little more realistic, and get away from just plain old HTML. So we'll be using this one, and this is where you find it if you have questions. PicoCSS.com. Okay, getting back to the web framework now. So let's get rid of this one. Go back to npexplorer.test, that's where we left off, and let's go back to our Internet Explorer, or not Internet Explorer, let's go back to Visual Studio Code. I don't even use Internet Explorer. Okay, so the next thing I want to fix up, of course, is how things look on the web page, and use my framework. And I have some other assets that I've created, and I put those all on my GitHub repository. And let me find my file directory here somewhere. I put it. Well, bear with me one second here. Yeah. Okay. So in CodeIgniter 4 intro, let me open this up and bring it over here. So I'm going to put this here and expand it out. I'll be putting this folder on my GitHub repository, and so everything that we do through the end of this tutorial will be available. At least everything that has been changed in NP Explorer will be here. Right now, there's a few things we need. First of all, we're going to need what's in the CSS folder and the images folder. We also need to get a boilerplate HTML file. But let's start out with a couple things that we need to do back in Visual Studio Code. We need to make a couple of directories that'll help us out. Let me reduce that. So back in our Visual Studio Code, go ahead and reduce this down. We need to add a couple of directories in the public folder. So we're going to create two of them. We're going to create a new folder called CSS, because there's a little bit of a custom style sheet for this particular theme that I'm using. That's the first one to create. And the next one we're going to make under public. Oh, I don't know how to do that. Let's go. Don't need that at all for right now. And the other thing that we will want to create in the public directory, let me get back down to that again because it kind of lost it here for some reason. Let's create a new folder called images, and we'll move some images from our folder to our file here. Let me reduce this just a little bit and get my folder kind of closer to the work that we're doing here. Let's just narrow it down a bit, and let me get the file folder back open again. Let me reduce this one just to get them kind of side by side here as best I can. Okay. And okay, so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to move some. Let's just move some images here. I've just got some images. Found these on Unsplash, and they're kind of all about the national parks. So again, this is just to give it the whole thing some dummy content. And let's move that into images. And there we go. We've got all the images that way that were in that images folder. And the next thing to get is this little CSS, custom CSS business right here, and put that in the CSS folder. Oh, not images. Come on. Is that going to do it? Yeah, CSS. So there you go. That's what that looks like. It's pretty brief. Just gives us a little bit more, a little bit of supplemental customization to the Pico CSS. All right, the last thing we're going to need to have is, let's see, it's going to be in views, and it's this index.html, and it's basically the boilerplate stuff that to get that landing page look, and we'll just be using that as a just a placeholder information for right now for our static pages, just to make them look a little better. And if you go ahead and put that in the views folder for right now, we'll be copying and chopping it up as time goes on. Eventually we won't need it anymore at all, and we'll remove it. But for now, if you'll just put it in the views folder, I think you'll find it. Oh, I already have one in there. Well, that's fine. Let's replace it. And there we go, index.html. And it's just, it's all the stuff we need to get that sort of that dummy content, that boilerplate or straw dog, whatever you want to call it. So there we go. Okay, so let's go. Let's stop here for a little bit, and the next thing we're going to do is we're going to plug this boilerplate into the view files that we've already created, and we're also going to work a little bit with moving from some data from the controller to the view, to get used to that idea of moving information, data from data objects from the controller to the view, and we begin to understand how all that stuff works. Okay. Let's take a quick look at the boilerplate, this index.html that we just copied over to our local directories and view file or view folder. And just to kind of walk through it, get some familiarity with it, just because we're going to be using it quite a bit. So, pretty basic stuff here. We are linking to the style sheet from the CDN for Pico CSS. We're also linking to the custom CSS file that we have stored here locally under our public CSS folder. We have a kind of hero class here that's defined in CSS. It's basically our header. It goes on here, and here's our title and some of the text that's kind of on top of that background image. And then we have a grid class here from Pico that helps keep our page responsive, so it appears correctly on different screen sizes. There's a little subscribe section here, and it's just pretty basic stuff. Nothing too amazing, but just give us some content to start with. Okay, so we're going to be using this guy in each of our static pages as a template. So just copy that off, and we'll start with the landing page. view, which is called landing message.php, and that's what it is right now. There's nothing much. So let's put something a little better in there, and we'll paste that in. And okay, I like it, and we'll save that. Go out to our web browser. Go up, I already get there, and we'll go to right here, explorer.test, where we want to be, and there we go. Now we're in the National Parks Explorer, and it looks a little more complete. Great, just what we were expecting. Okay, let's go back to Visual Studio Code, and now what I want to show you how to do is how to pass data from a controller to a view. And this is a fundamental idea, fundamental concept. Soon we'll be moving to creating models and creating data objects, and we'll want to pass that data object or elements of that object to our view, and this is how we do it. This is the methodology for making that transfer. So let's go to our controller for the landing page called landingpage.php from our controller. So let's just open it here, landingpage.php. And right now there's not much going on in this function index. So we're gonna add some variable an array so that we can pass to our view method, and that's with data, and we're gonna give it a key title, and we're gonna give it a value of just a string here. Welcome to National Parks Explorer. It just puts a little more verbiage in here just to distinguish it from what's in there now, so make sure we got it in correctly. Hi. Hi. Let's try it that way. Okay. And yeah, that works. I want to arrange this a little bit better here. Got a string, be sure to close that off. And now to pass it to our view file, landing message.php, we type in this second parameter, data. And so that'll move it. That'll move this data variable, this array into our view using the view method. And so that's how we accomplish this, moving data from a controller to a view. Okay, so to finish that off, of course, we've got to plug it into our view file, and our view file here, of course, again is landing message.php, and under our views directory. Go there, and right now, where is my? Oh, that's in the header there. This is. Where is the title? There it is. There's our title right here. Welcome to National Parks Explorer. So here's where we're gonna echo out our. And we access it like that in this particular case, and there we go. Now, if you've worked with web development frameworks in the past, generally speaking, now they all have integrated templating engines. CodeIgniter is an exception. They've made the design decision not to include an integrated templating system. They have matching functionality in some of their components, but you are going to be using PHP tags inside of your HTML views, which feels a little, like you're going backwards. If you're felt a little squishy to me when I was doing it, but I understand their argument and can appreciate their argument. They're saying, hey, we don't want to commit to a single templating engine. We feel there's a speed improvement here using regular PHP tags. PHP is really a templating engine of its own. It's a templating system anyway. And so, okay, I'll buy your argument, and I won't try to integrate one of my own at this point. Hopefully, this won't be a deal breaker if you're a developer who's worked with a templating engine that you really love. I mean, it is different, but like I said, it feels a little funny, but I think you can appreciate the value of it as you're going through this tutorial. So, all right, enough said about that. Let's go back to our main point of this portion of the video, and that is moving data from a controller to a view. And just to reiterate and kind of make sure we got this, I'm going to save this file. Okay, this is how it's happening. We're putting in this data array here with the key title. There's our value, the string, hi, welcome to National Park Explorer, and we're passing that array into the view method with this parameter data. And if I've done everything right, it should work just fine. So let's just make sure everything's saved. It looks like it is. That's my classic error. Let's go back to National Explorer.test. Right now it says welcome to National Parks Explorer. Let's see if we've changed it to the message that we've created as data when we refresh here. There it worked. So our new string, hi, welcome to National Explorer, is here. All kinds of exclamation points. So exclamation marks. So there we go. So that's the kind of a fundamental notion, moving data from a controller to a view. In the next little segment here on this video, I'm going to go ahead and kind of confirm, reiterate this a little bit when we're adding our two other static pages, contact and about. And then after that, I'll end that video finally, and then we'll go on to in the next video working with data models and passing data from the actual data from the model to the data object to the controller to the view. All right. Let's go ahead and finish putting the boilerplate template into our Contact Us and About Us pages for our National Parks Explorer project here. And let's open up Visual Studio Code in the folder NP Explorer, and let's start working with the controllers. Well, actually, you know what we should do first? Let's go ahead and put the boilerplate into each of the views. Let's open up the index HTML, and we got to copy all this off and put it into each of the views for our static pages, our last two. Let's copy that, and then let's go right into About Message PHP, and let's just put our boilerplate right here. Paste that in, be sure to save it. Might as well do the same thing for contact message. This is under views, contact message. And we'll put it in there, paste. Okay, now we're ready to take a look at our controllers and finish those off. We'll save that one. And basically in the controllers, we just want to pass some data just to get grounded in doing how we do that. Let's start with about here. And we'll create some data. And with the key title in this array, how about title? And then that'll be set equal to the string about us. About us. Sure to end that. And then of course we've got to pass the data to the view method with the second parameter data. Okay, let's save that one. And let's just go make sure that that's working right here and get what we want. Let's do about. And there we go. Oh, we forgot something. Okay, let's go back. Forgot to get we need to ask for the data, ask for the title variable in our about message. Forgot to do that. All right, let's find out where do we have it here. Welcome back. This is where we want to put our title, our About Us title. So here's where we got to put it. Equals title. Title. And just expect these things to happen automatically. Okay. There we go. Let's save that. All right, let's try it again. Make sure it's working properly. Test about. And there we go. Yep, doing what it's supposed to do. Okay, one more time for the contact page. And let's go to the in our controller for contact PHP. Let's get a little data there for the title. And data. Key title in the array. And set equal to the string contact us. So contact us. End it, and be sure to pass the data in that second parameter for the method view. Okay. All right, set that, save it, and finally we've got to make sure we have that. Looking for that echoing title here in our contact page, and we'll do that right here. And okay, so that ought to do it. Let's make sure it's working on the contact page now. back to our web browser. Let's type in our URI segment for our controller named contact, and undefined variable tile. So let's see what I did wrong. Likely forgot to save something. That's usually my deal. Contact PHP, and this one is our contact message. That looks right. It's been saved. Contact PHP. What did I do? Data title dot, spelled it wrong. That's what happened there. File save. So yeah, gotta have the right name. All right, let's save that. Right. Yep. And let's try it again. Contact. There we go. Contact us. Okay. So we've completed all of the static pages, at least to this point. Got the boilerplate in there. We'll be taking the boilerplate apart and using CodeIgniter's view layout functionality or their component in the future, just so we're not repeating quite so much HTML and trying to keep our code dry as we can. So this is the end of this video, and the next one we're going to jump right into CRUD functionality, working with data models and data objects, and getting that going on. I think you'll really enjoy that part of the kernel of the tutorial. I hope that this has been helpful. Please like and subscribe if you found this useful. And yeah, I welcome your comments. If there's something that you'd like to see, or if there's something if I went over something too fast, just let me know, and I'd be happy to try to make the change and make it work. All right, we'll see you in the next video.